So you have your value scale with the holes punched in it, and you will try placing it over different areas. So if I was doing this kind of mid-tone value, you can see the hole still shows in the light values, but if I slide down, eventually it will look like the hole almost disappears. And when you can't really obviously see the little hole punch, then you know that that is a value that's really close to the one on the photograph, and you should apply that same value to that area in your drawing. So now here, if I'm looking at this low value, it's going to be slightly lighter than black, so maybe just one step down, which is very different from the values over here, which are more in the mid-tone range. So figuring out where your really strong, obvious contrasts are, we're going to start with the dark values. So I can work the dark values here and in the background and just kind of warm up doing some values where they feel really kind of comfortable and safe. And you can kind of give yourself a little hard edge that separates the background from the object. And then use little tiny ovals and circles and start shading those in. Remember to build up your values slowly and not to start with like really strong, heavy lines. Instead, you want to do little ovals. Right now you can see I'm erasing my grid. I just want to make sure that none of the drawing is going to show through or the grid lines are going to show through when I'm finished with my charcoal drawing. If you have straight edges, go ahead and grab a straight edge. You can use the edge of your value scale or a ruler or a piece of paper or a folder, but right now I'm trying to draw where the area rug meets the hardwood floor, and I'm going to make sure that's a nice crisp line and then continue with my shading. So now I'm looking for some of the lighter shadows that are on the hardwood floor and where they fall on the value scale. And you can use your pencil. You could also use your tortillon stump, but if you use the blending stump on the paper, it will push the charcoal into the tooth of the paper and it will make your values darker because the white paper won't be showing through. So just make sure you're careful with using the pencil or using the tortillon stump depending on what effect you want to create. And if you're not sure, try them both in the margins and experiment and see what happens with them. So here I'm kind of mixing between using the pencil with a good amount of pressure to show the wood grain and then a lighter amount of pressure to show those lighter values. I will end up going back into this again later. Another thing you can do if you have different textures and you want to create higher values or smoother textures, you can use your tortillon stump to actually draw. So you can pick up charcoal from your darker areas and then bring it into those lighter areas. So I already had some charcoal on there, and now I'm trying to show that like fuzzy furry texture that is on the boot. And I can still put pencil over this. I could start with this as a base, and then if I feel like there's little darker shadows that are a little bit rougher and more textured, I can add those values in, either with the tortillon stump or with the pencil, or both. And here I'm alternating drawing with the pencil and the tortillon stump, and it's really just going to take some practice and experimenting with both things to see which creates which effect. It's probably better to shy away from using the tortillon stump too much because you can always blend it and push it into the tooth of the paper. But once you do that, you can't get that highlight back or the texture of the paper back. And you can see on the wood grain there, the texture of the paper showing through, and it's perfectly fine. Here, I want this area to be a really large, dark, smooth area. So I have this massive blending stump that I'm using and just kind of smearing it all in. You can see it's getting darker and it no longer has the texture or the tooth of the paper showing through. So on here you can see I've done some of the wood grain and the floor on the other side. I used both the tortillon stump, and then to create those darker values I used the pencil again over the top, so it has both kind of that gritty texture and the smooth texture. And then the next stage, you can see there the wood floor is pretty much done. There's also a cast shadow to the right of the boot. There's like almost like a little line under there that in the photograph you can see there's a little bit of a shadow that's more pronounced there, and I wanted to make sure to capture that. Next, I'll start working on some of the details on the boot and capturing some of the higher and mid-tone values.